The first thought is they're not going to get out. I mean, the kids, we've done recoveries before with live people, and it's all about panic underwater.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And if you were watching Four Corners last Monday, you'd know that interview with British cave diver Jason Mallison was one of the highlights of their one-hour special on the amazing Thai cave rescue. But if you tune into Sunrise next morning, you'd have discovered that Seven had the exclusive too.
The rescuers behind the Thai cave miracle have revealed incredible details of the perilous operation.
Yes, indeed, they had revealed the incredible details, but not to Sunrise, which had simply stolen the ABC's interviews, lock, stock and barrel.
The first thought is they're not going to get out.
And that was not the only grab that Sunrise lifted. There was also this.
We went there and we actually dry rehearsed where we had divers and children wearing the equipment they were going to use for the rescue.
And this.
I was fully expecting that we would accept casualties, maybe 3, 4, possibly 5 would die.
And this.
We told them what was going to happen and said, you choose your best men.
Sunrise ran its cave segment 8 times during the programme, with no mention at all of Four Corners in the graphics, which labelled the story New This Morning and hid the ABC watermark with the Sunrise logo. Magic, eh? So, no surprise that ABC reporter Mark Willisey tweeted furiously that Seven had
ripped off all of our Four Corners interviews. No attribution and no shame.
So, how did it happen? Well, if you believe Sunrise EP Michael Pell, it was just an unfortunate error that was immediately corrected.
Once we realised our supers were covering up the original bugs, we gave full attribution with a top left super.
But that does not really wash. The so-called full attribution was on screen for a mere 5 seconds, and compared with the credit given on 9, it was pretty pathetic. Meanwhile, in the face of mounting criticism, Pell has objected to being branded the Daily Mail of TV and promised won't be happening again. Our policy remains full attribution. But if that's so, how come a similar error occurred just a week earlier with this graphic of the cave system, also pinched by Sunrise from ABC News, also without attribution? Funny, eh? And how did this copycat story about a Canberra woman, Jessica Kelly, losing her sense of smell, sneak in 3 weeks ago?
Imagine if you lost 2 of your most important senses and could never again enjoy your favourite foods, missing out on walking up to the waft of sizzling bacon, enjoying fresh buttery popcorn at the movies, or the invigorating scent of newly cut grass. Who wrote this? It's so funny.
Who wrote this? Good question. Might have been someone at the ABC, which broadcast a remarkably similar story 4 days earlier.
Imagine being unable to smell freshly brewed coffee or newly mown grass.
The ABC also published its story about Jessica Kelly online, with those lines about bacon and popcorn. And come the weekend, Sunrise was helping itself, taking all of the ABC's footage and getting Jessica to tell them about chocolate.
Things like chocolate that I used to love are really not, pleasant for me anymore.
Which is what she told them in the ABC's original story.
She doesn't enjoy food she once loved, like chocolate.
Can you taste it though?
No.
Sunrise also used the ABC's footage of Jessica checking her fire alarm and getting milk from the fridge and asking her boyfriend to smell it. In fact, Greedy Sunrise ripped off more than a minute of the ABC News report to illustrate their story and did not tell viewers where it came from. So, remind me of that promise from Sunrise's Michael Pell?
Won't be happening again. Our policy remains full attribution.
Excuse me while I choke on my cornflakes. But now, let's go to Britain and a famous High Court victory last week.
British music legend Sir Cliff Richard has won more than $370,000 in damages in a privacy lawsuit against the BBC. The judge ruled a live broadcast of a police raid on his home was a breach of privacy.
Yes, a big win for the Peter Pan pop star, who is now 77 years old, and one that could have a major effect on the British media, because it redraws the boundary between the public's right to know and an individual's right to privacy. Back in 2014, Sir Cliff's Berkshire home was raided by police, investigating allegations that he had sexually assaulted a 16-year-old boy in 1986. The BBC knew the raid was planned and arranged with police to film it, broadcasting these intrusive helicopter shots in its report.
The cars could be seen as they parked and as the police team made its way towards the empty apartment owned by Sir Cliff Richard.
Sir Cliff was in Portugal at the time and hadn't yet been arrested or charged. And as it turned out, he never would be. Police dropped the investigation in June 2016, but left his reputation in tatters. Last year, the police paid Sir Cliff £400,000 in damages, but the BBC decided to fight it in court, arguing its reporting was justified and in the public interest. And then last week, the BBC lost, leaving Sir Cliff relieved, but still angry.
I've had to suffer all of this, financially but more importantly, emotionally, for what? For absolutely doing zero.
The judge ruled the BBC's coverage of the raid breached Sir Cliff's privacy and damaged his dignity, status and reputation. On the steps of the court, the BBC's head of news, Fran Unsworth, apologised to Sir Cliff, but expressed concern at what the judgment would mean for British press freedom.
The judge has also made clear that even if there'd been no footage of the search and the story had less prominence, the very naming of Sir Cliff would have been unlawful. This creates a significant shift against press freedom. This means police investigations and searches of people's homes could go unreported and unscrutinised.
And veteran BBC reporter John Simpson asked,
how many crooks and scumbags would try to take advantage of this?
In future, it seems, the media will only be able to report such raids once the person concerned has been arrested, which, in my view, in cases like this, is perfectly reasonable. But the BBC is not alone in thinking it unfair. Writing in The Guardian, Roy Greenslade said the landmark ruling
sets a precedent whereby a celebrity's right to privacy trumps the public's right to know.
So, what could Sir Cliff's victory mean for the Australian media? Matthew Collins QC, who acted for Rebel Wilson in her defamation case against Women's Day, told Media Watch,
it is unlikely an Australian court would protect a celebrity in circumstances similar to those involving Sir Cliff.
And he says that's because there is no right to privacy enshrined in legislation here, as there is in the UK. But barrister Michael Rivett, who's been testing privacy law in Australia for several years, thinks the case will have an impact. And he told Media Watch,
I'll be referring to this case to try and change the law in future.
And he says the media here would be wise to treat the Richard judgment as a warning of what could happen.
The press have taken a real beating in England in terms of privacy. The courts have been critical of their conduct, and that's really come through in the Cliff Richard case. If the courts don't like the practices of the media, then the scales will tip away from the freedom of the press in favour of the privacy of the individual.
And he adds,
salacious allegations against Sir Cliff on the front page may increase circulation, but that is not the test journalists need to apply.
But now to a quiz. What do the following have in common? Here is clip number 1 from Channel 7.
Running riot across our suburbs. The new gangs police won't acknowledge. The latest attack just days ago. Their crimes are sending chills across Australia.
And here is clip number 2 from Sky News.
Sarah is known for liking men. The rumours about her in Parliament House are well known. So I just said, well, stop shagging men then, Sarah.
Got the answer? Well, both have attracted the rage of a group called Sleeping Giants Oz, which is an Australian copy of the powerful US social media campaign
to make bigotry and sexism less profitable.
The US campaign works by using social media to pressure advertisers into withdrawing support for so-called hate speech. And against the ultra-right-wing site Breitbart in particular, the US Sleeping Giants have achieved remarkable success.
Their model of polite, carefully targeted, crowdsourced activism has resulted in nearly 4,000 companies adding the site to their programmatic advertising blacklists.
So, will the Australian campaign have a similar impact? 2 weeks ago, Sky's Monday night version of the Bolt Report was, as usual, chock full of ads.
The celebrations continue at Kia.
Experience smooth, creamy milk chocolate.
But 1 hour later on Outsiders with Rowan Dean and Ross Cameron, where David Leyonhjelm had appeared, there were no ads at all, just free in-house promos for Foxtel and Sky.
American Horror Story Cult begins Thursday, July 26 on Showcase.
Sky News Extra on Channel 604 is the new home of live coverage of parliaments nationwide.
And that apparent advertising strike, which left Outsiders ad-free for 4 episodes in a row, soon had Andrew Bolt firing up, branding it
this war against Sky News, this vicious campaign over the past week to drive Sky News off your screens and out of business.
Bolt went on to claim that Sky's enemies were using the Leyonhjelm incident as an excuse to attack.
Many activists and journalists of the left, they hate Sky. They always have. And so these activists are now misusing Hanson Young's victory. They're turning that victory into an ideological weapon to smash Sky.
And 2 weeks ago, it looked like Sleeping Giants might actually be winning.
Confirmed, Scenic AU will stop advertising on Sky News Australia. Brave and principled, we all appreciate your stance. Thank you.
Over on 7, Sleeping Giants was also making some impact on Sunday night over its controversial programme on African gangs, where 1 or 2 advertisers were also wavering. But fast forward a fortnight, and both shows seem to have weathered the storm. Advertisers were back on Outsiders last week and again yesterday, and Sleeping Giants now has a new list of 16 advertisers on the show for its followers to target. So it seems the outrage in Australia has not yet reached critical mass. And that does not surprise PR expert Patrice Pandelios, who told MediaWatch,
brands pull out if there's enough controversy and pressure from consumers and they think it could damage their brand. But rarely do they keep their ads off air for the long term, because TV is a great opportunity.
But regardless of whether it could work here or not, is this sort of activism to be welcomed? Or is it an attack on free speech? Sleeping Giants Oz told us,
we're simply saying we find media targeting people because of their race, the colour of their skin, their religion or their sexual orientation is unacceptable. Companies are at liberty to say, yes, we agree, and withdraw or change their advertising, or they say we are comfortable with the content and continue to advertise.
Fair enough, but we reckon the bar needs to be set pretty high. And another way to boycott programmes like Outsiders and Sunday Night if you don't like what they say is switch them off. But finally, to a sporting tragedy in the West.
We're starting with some unfortunate news, not only for West Coast fans, but just AFL fans in general, because star ruckman Nick Naitanui has yet another long stint out of the game.
Yes, a tough break for the player. But news of his injury was soon overtaken by an even bigger drama.
The team arrived home in Perth last night, taking the ruckman through a side door. But look at this, the club's so-called integrity officer doing his utmost to keep the waiting media at arm's length.
Out. Go on, you've got enough. Get out of here. It's private property. It's private property. Get out of here.
Don't touch the camera.
So-called integrity officer indeed. The assault on news cameraman by the official Peter Staples had AFL circles buzzing, particularly in Perth, where it was news on Channel 10.
Emotions running high during testing times.
Get out of here, all of you. All of you, go!
And one of the lead items on Nine's Perth News. So, why the fracas? Well, networks were invited to film the player in the airport, and when he didn't appear, they found him in the car park and got their shots. That is fair enough, we reckon. The leading AFL media figure Mike Sheehan believes the media should have hit back.
I'm staggered that nothing's come of this. The Media Association in Perth, if there is one, if they're the Jets crackers, they would have boycotted West Coast this week.
So, where was AFL-loving Channel 7 in all of this? On its National Footy show on Monday, pundits condemned the thuggish behaviour.
What is wrong with a bit of vision of a player that's injured getting into his car?
That's an embarrassment for the West Coast.
But if you watched 7 News in Perth, you would have not seen the brawl.
On crutches, his right knee bandaged and strapped with an ice pack.
7's camera person was one of those assaulted, but strangely its story cut out before the melee. So, why might that be? Well, 7's not only a broadcast partner of the AFL, it's also principal media partner of the West Coast Eagles. So, was that a factor? A spokesman told us no.
The Eagles did not ask that we ignore the incident. We did not discuss the editorial content of the story with them, and we did not self-censor.
They say they just didn't think local viewers would be interested. Really? And the club's other principal media partner, the West Australian, also owned by 7 West Media and controlled by Perth billionaire Kerry Stokes, seems to have taken the same view. The paper didn't mention the fracas until Saturday, when the club finally apologised. Fancy that. And there's more about tonight's stories on our Facebook page or our website, where you can read full statements from Channel 7 about Sunrise and the West Coast Eagles. And don't forget, Media Bites every Thursday. But for now, until next week, that's it from us. Goodbye.